What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining me this morning. I'm going to postpone introduction just for a second because there's a few things that I would like you to do as you're attending this session. So as you can see on the screen, I have a poll everywhere that we're going to use later on. So 37607 is the phone number for the poll. Charlie Rizzuto 939 is the code. So if you've never used Poll Everywhere before, grab your phone, go into the text message app, type in 37607 as the phone number and Charlie Rizzuto 939 as the message. And then send the message, Charlie Rizzuto 939, to that phone number, 37607. You'll enter into my poll, and then you can put that down for now. And we're going to use it later on in the presentation. Before we go any further, I want to thank Phys Edagogy for putting on another Phys Ed Summit. I love these. I love attending them. I love presenting at them. I just love what they do for our profession and to help support teachers. And I always look forward to a Phys Ed Summit. What I want to do now is ask everybody in attendance to think for a second. I want you to think way back to that teacher that you had when you were in school, preferably K to 12, that has stuck with you to this day. That teacher that you had that had an impact on your life in some way, shape, or form. And as you're rolling through different names of people that you remember, teachers that you had in high school and middle school and elementary school, I want you to start to think about why they stuck with you. Why do you remember them to this day? Why did they have such a large impact? And as you think, I want you to differentiate into two different groups. So did they stick with you because of how smart they were? Was it knowledge and pedagogy? Or did they stick with you because of how they made you feel? How you felt when you walked into their classroom every single day? Was it relationships? And as you're thinking about that, you could share it in the back channel. I'm going to take this opportunity to now introduce myself. I am Charlie Rizzuto. I'm a health and physical education teacher at Oyster Bay High School. I also am lucky enough to work as an adjunct professor at Adelphi University. What usually happens when I do this activity in person is relationships is the answer. Relationships basically serves as the foundation for everything that we do with our students moving forward. And you've heard of, I'm sure you've heard of the 5 Ps before. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. And oftentimes when we hear that, we think of resources, right? Ways to prepare to give our lesson, ways to prepare to deliver health skills, ways to prepare to deliver content or information. And we may use these resources. We may use these 2 incredible books for teaching skills-based health education. If you don't have these 2 books, you might want to grab them or reach out to people that have them and pick their brains a little bit. But that's not really what I'm talking about when I talk about preparation or when I even talk about my 5 Ps, because my 5 Ps are a little different than those. My 5 Ps directly correlate to what goes on inside room 301. That's my health room at Oyster Bay High School, or I should say that is the health room. I teach high school health in there most of the time. Our middle school health teacher also teaches health in there most of the time. If there's conflict in schedule, then we'll get bumped to another room. But 301 is basically the health room. And when my students walk through that door, I want them to feel a type of way. I want them to feel like they're going to be safe. I want them to feel excited. I want them to kind of feel like they're at home for 40 minutes. So my 5 Ps are proper preparation produces productive people. And my preparation leads with relationships. My preparation leads, or the attempt is to lead with equity, with student voice, with all students feeling included. And the truth is, right, we teach a lot of lessons, and sometimes we fall a little short. But when I think of preparation, obviously I'm preparing a lesson. Obviously I'm focusing on skills. Obviously I have content and information and activities and all of those things. All of that stuff needs to be prepared. But the biggest pieces of my preparation, especially in the sequence of my curriculum, starts with relationships. And the title of this presentation is Getting Our Kids What They Need in Health Education. The first thing we're going to focus on is the fact that our kids need health teachers that know love that they know, love, and understand the out. But what I want to focus in right now is an idea that I got from Adam Mullis. Adam and I were on the Shape America podcast together. And I don't remember if it was a conversation that was occurring before we actually went live on the podcast or during the podcast, but he mentioned how he ends every class saying, love you, mean it, bye, to his students. And it got me thinking. I was like, look, I know my students know that I care about them a lot. But I'm also fairly certain that a lot of them may not hear that from anybody during the course of a day or maybe ever. So is that something I could bring into my classroom? And if so, how? Because look, we do love our students, right? So the activity that I put together for my students start with learning partners. I don't know if any of you use learning partners, but learning partners is essentially a way for students to group up, whether in pairs or larger groups, from day to day. So who they're working with can change from day to day. Now, there is something that I build into this because we teach consent, and I feel like it's important to have consent in a lot of things that we do, because if we're going to preach it, if we're going to teach it, we should act on it. So there are parts to learning partners where if a student doesn't consent either in that day or anymore, because they have choice or an element of choice in the beginning on who their partners are going to be for the school year. But if that changes and they don't consent to the partner, we have things in place where students can change their partners, or we can move into groups or things of that nature if they don't want to work one-on-one with an individual student. But this is a sheet that they get when we do this activity. And this activity leads into that element of being loved when you come into school and into health class and people that care about you. So every student gets this sheet, and I put a prompt on the board for each dimension of wellness. So we have the 10 dimensions of wellness on the sheet. And the prompt might be, find somebody in the room that has the same favorite activity as you do and make them your physical health learning partner. So they move around the room, they find somebody who has the same favorite activity as they do. They may love to play soccer, they may love to ride bikes, they may love to go hiking, whatever it may be. They find that one person, and then they write their partner's name on their sheet, their partner writes their name on their sheet, and then that's their physical health learning partner anytime we use physical health learning partner. So if they come into class and on the board it says get with your physical health learning partner, they get with that person. And we go through each dimension of wellness in that way. They get a prompt, they find a different person every time. And then after the prompt, we also unpack the dimension of wellness a little bit. What does it mean to be physically healthy? What does physical health mean? So we have those conversations. And after they get their learning partners, I show them this video. The world is coming to an end. I'm not going to show it to you right now, or why I think the world should end. I'm not going to show it to you, but basically this video goes through a lot of things that the speaker believes plague us as a society, right? Things that just aren't right. The cool thing about the talk is that he touches on every dimension of wellness, all of them. So one of the things I ask my students to do is, as we watch the video, find the dimensions of wellness that are embedded in the talk, in all the things that this speaker views as being wrong, quote unquote, with society right now. So they go through and they try to find the dimensions of wellness, and all 10 of them are there. Then after we watch the video, I ask them what the speaker's answer to all of these issues that we face as a society is. And at the end of the video, the speaker talks about love and how love can solve a lot of things, right? Maybe not everything, but a lot of things. But he talks about true love, boundless love, real love, not the love that you hear in your favorite song, but real love. After we talk, or after I ask them that, I ask them who loves them. I say, who loves you? And they share a whole bunch of different answers. My mom loves me, my dad loves me, my friends love me, my significant other loves me. And I always follow it up with, how do you know? And we go around the room really quickly, right? They put hands up, who loves you? They answer, how do you know? And then they give a reason. Inevitably, somebody says, my dog loves me. Well, how do you know? Well, they wag their tail and they jump on me when I come home. And sometimes those are the best how do you knows. And then I tell them a story. How when I was a kid, we didn't really say, I love you in my family. I never really heard it when I was a kid. And that doesn't mean that there wasn't love. That doesn't mean that my parents and my sister didn't love me and I didn't love them. But we just never said it until one day I was going to bed and I walked by my parents' room and my dad was in there, and I walked by. I said, "Good night, Dad." He said, "Good night, Chuck." She called me Chuck. And I kind of went back and I poked my head in and I said, "I love you." And I don't know why I said love ya. Maybe it was easier to get out. But he looked back and he said, "I love you too." And I went to bed. And from that point forward, love ya was something that we said. To this day, love ya is something that we say. Now, I love you does come out now more than it did then, but our kids need health teachers that are real people and aren't afraid to show them that they're real people. So every day when the bell rings in my class, I say, "I love you. I mean it. I'll see you tomorrow." And after I tell them that story and we talk about all the different types of love, I tell them, when you come into this building, you are loved. When you come into this classroom, you are loved. It may look different than how your friends love you, which looks different than how your parents love you, which looks different than how your siblings love you, which looks different than how a significant other might show love. But you are loved. And I remind them of that every single day, because the truth is, some of my students, some of your students may never, ever, ever hear that. And I think it's a valuable gift to give them. And again, it helps with those relationships. At the end of the school year, I do surveys with my students and they could write me notes or whatever. This student wrote, it was a class that they always looked forward to. And at the bottom, they wrote, "Love you, mean it, bye." So that was when I first started doing this. I did the activity, but if you notice, I changed the language over time. And one of the reasons that I changed the language over time is because to some of my students, bye can be so final. And they may have heard that in their life, and that was legitimately the end of something, or somebody left their life. And again, preparing for the relationship building, I don't want to something that I'm going to give them that's supposed to be special and important and valuable and nice and all that stuff. I don't want it to serve as a trigger. So I wrote, "I'll see you tomorrow." Or if it's Friday, have a great weekend. I'll see you Monday. Or if it's a vacation, whenever I'm scheduled to see them, next will be. Now, I might be absent the next day. So then I'm not going to be there. But even though if I'm absent the next day and I didn't foresee myself not being there, number one, they know, unless, obviously we don't want anything bad to happen, but I'll be back. And two, when I said I'll see you tomorrow, it may have eliminated a trigger for some of my students. So that's why I changed the language. At the end of the school year, I got this message last year. So I asked my students at the beginning of the year, I basically just polled them about, the importance of classes because of the hierarchy of education. There are some kids that look forward to taking health. There are some kids that are so transcript driven that they may have rather taken another AP class or another college credit class. So basically, I tell them, look, if that's how you feel right now, that doesn't hurt my feelings. That's okay. We're on day 3. We're on day 1. We're on day 2. Whenever it is that I bring this conversation up. But my hope is at the end of the year, your view changes a little bit, and you see the value and the importance, and you enjoyed being here. And do you remember the first day of class when you asked us if kids would take health if they didn't have to take health? And I said I would rather take another AP course. I would like to change my answer. Thank you. Love you, mean it. LYMI. So those are the wins, right? Those are the moments that we really, really love as teachers. Another thing that I do, we're going to float by this, is at the beginning of the year to build relationships and to show my students that I'm a real person, and for them to get to know me a little bit, was we play What Would You Do? And I throw scenarios at them. They group up and they basically just figure out what they would do if they were in that scenario. But every scenario that I throw at them is something that happened to me, something that I lived through. One of the scenarios that I throw at them is you're an Uber driver. And you're out one night and you pick somebody up and you're about to drop them off at their destination, and you look in the rearview mirror and they've passed out, they've fallen asleep, something has happened. What would you do? And I use that opportunity to tell them a couple things that they could learn about me. One, in the summertime, sometimes I drive Uber. And more importantly, the reason why I started driving Uber, although you can make some good money driving Uber, one of the reasons why I started driving Uber is to meet people, to hear stories, to get some perspective on things, and just doing that. What would you do? And then telling them a little bit about me. Students who may not know me that well start to learn more about me. And obviously all those scenarios tell them a little bit more about me. The scenarios also link to things we're going to learn in health class, right? So I told them what I did in that scenario. That person was intoxicated. And in health class, we learn about alcohol, we learn about intoxication, we learn about helping people that may be succumbing to acute alcohol poisoning and things of that nature. So it not only does it connect to me, but it also connects to what we're going to learn going forward. Another thing that speaks to being real with my students that I always do in the beginning is we talk about the difference between playing school and playing in school. And I tell them, I don't want to seem harsh, but I don't really care that much about your grade. And when I first tell them that, some students may look like this, some students may look like this, some students may look like this. Some students may be super nervous and just kind of crossing their fingers about what the heck does he mean by that. But we talk about the difference, like I said, about playing in school and playing school. And to me, playing school is, all right, give me the rubric, give me the criteria, give me whatever, and I'm going to do exactly what you asked me to do, the way that you asked me to do it, and I'm going to give you something so I get a good grade. Okay, fine. But if we put the grade aside for now and you take risks and you stretch your thinking and you try to be creative, to me, that's playing in school, right? You're giving a skill set, you're given some information, you're given a task, you're giving an activity, you're given something. Just play with it. See what you can come up with. See how you could stretch your thinking. See what collaboration and communication does for you and what you can produce in the end, not worrying about a number or a letter, because we could always fix the number. Obviously, we give grades, right? So I understand that the grade's not totally unimportant. There's some importance and value to the grade. But let's put the grade to the side to start. And then if for whatever reason, like you missed the mark or whatever, and the number that I ended up giving you wasn't what you wanted, we could always go back and fix that number, right? The learning never stops. You could always improve it. So at the beginning of the year, we always talk about that a little bit, the difference between playing in school and playing school. And don't come here to earn a number. Come here to acquire a skill. Come here to get information. Come here to think. We'll figure out the number as we go. And I hope that that is something that my students over time, and I know that over time they learn to trust that. But right now, in this distance learning environment or remote emergency instruction environment that we're in, I feel like that's kind of coming to the forefront a little bit. For my kids, and I'm able to see the fact that they're still taking this idea and putting it into practice with what they're giving me back and some of the things that I'm sending home, which is really cool. They always have, even now, they always have the opportunity to fix, to redo, to whatever based on the feedback that I give them. And I feel like that's really, really important to kind of put that grade to the side, and especially in the beginning, and let them know, let's do stuff. Let's not try to earn numbers. Next one is, our kids need to take the skills they learn beyond the walls of the classroom. And that actually brings me to something really, really cool. So I'm actually going to stop presenting for a moment. And I believe I've stopped presenting. So we started a secret society at my school. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to see if I could get some of them on here to, hold on one second. You ready? All right. Okay. I'm going to see if I could get some of them to come on here and actually talk about what the purple cloaks are, what the purple cloaks mean, what the purple cloaks do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share only, I'm going to try to share only the purple cloak slide, and that they're able to come in and join us and give them their perspective of what it means to be a cloak and what we try to do. So the purple cloaks are a secret society that we started a few years ago at Oyster Bay, where students basically tried to deliver positive messages, encouraging messages, and things of that nature around the building. So it looks like we have one of them here right now. Cloak, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I could hear you. You are with us, and I think some other cloaks may be joining us. But we are live. We are recording. And you have an opportunity right now to talk a little bit about the purple cloaks, what it means to you, or anything that you want to share with the people that are attending the session.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about how we were selected, how we were chosen for the society. So the current group and the past group that selected us were chosen because of their presence in the building and qualities including civility and leadership that showed what they could contribute to the society. The candidates would need to be able to keep their membership hidden and be able to meet secretly and carry out activities that could brighten somebody's day and make our school a better place. Each year, the current members select around 5 candidates. This year it was 6 to join the society and carry on what they had done the year before.
All right, the
Awesome.
members of the Purple Cloaks remain anonymous all year, and we are revealed at our graduation ceremony. Our identities are kept a secret for both the mysterious factor and because we're students who do not feel like we need to be recognized and praised for our kindness, but help others even when no one is watching.
All right, looks like we have one more. I think your microphone's muted, kid. Let me see if I can unmute her. No, I can't unmute her.
Okay. So I'm going to be talking about the Citizen of the Week. So throughout the year, we tried to make our presence known in the school. And one way we did that is by Citizen of the Week. So throughout the week, as we went throughout the day, if we noticed a student go out of their way to help someone or be nice or just try and, show kindness in any way, we told Mr. Rizzuto that we would like to choose that person to be the Citizen of the Week. And then on the Friday morning announcements, the person making the announcement would read that was our Citizen of the Week and why we chose them. And this is just our way of showing people that their acts of kindness don't go unnoticed, and we are in the school looking out for people that are really just trying to be nice.
Awesome. It looks like we had one more cloak just join. Do you wish to share anything?
Yes. Give me a second. Sorry. So we thought that this was really cool because we were the first school on Long Island to start this, and we thought it was really cool because it shows how unique of a program this is to spread kindness around by being sort of in the dark, and we love how we're able to spread kindness without people having to know who we are. And I think we do great things. Yep.
You do great and amazing things. So I know you have a very busy day right now. So I'm going to let you go. But thank you for jumping on, and thank you for sharing with everybody and giving some insight into who the Purple Cloaks are and what they do. All right, so I will talk to you soon, and go get the rest of your work done.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
So the Purple Cloaks are an amazing group of kids every single year. And like they said, they are a secret society. Nobody knows who's in the cloaks until graduation. They get unveiled at graduation, and then everybody knows who they are. The cloaks this year will pick the cloaks for next year. So when graduation comes around, next year's group is going to be chosen. They get a secret letter, if we were in school, from the main office inviting them to be a cloak. They could deny it and throw it away, and that's cool. But if they accept it, they come to a secret meeting in the school building. They meet the cloaks that chose them, and then they become a cloak for the next school year. Some other things that they've done in the past to spread kindness. This year's group, they didn't discuss it, but this year's group on Valentine's Day went to, we're 7 through 12 in one building. So they went to the middle school hallways and lockers, and they left Valentine's Day cards on all the lockers, which was really, really sweet. Last year's group, during AP testing, they went into school super early, and they left little notes and little treats on every desk, and then on the big whiteboard in the front of the room that usually tells you how much time they have left in the exam. They wrote "Good luck" from the Purple Cloaks. They just basically do anything they can to spread kindness and bring awareness to things. The Purple Cloaks have done fundraisers in the past to support families in the community that may have had something occur where they might need some support. They give a scholarship at the end of the year to two deserving seniors that live by those traits that the cloaks are supposed to embody, civility, selflessness, all of those types of things. At graduation, they also put like a gift under a chair where the attendees or the families sit, and also under a chair of a graduate. And our principal, after she unveils the cloaks, she also tells everybody to check under their chairs, and there's a gift there for them. Usually it's like a gift card to Soul Bowl or a restaurant in town or something of that nature. So they do a lot of really, really cool things. This group was originated years ago after we went on a college tour to the University of Virginia, and we saw all their secret societies. And then a couple students came up to me and we started some conversations, and it actually started where there was a family. So taking that, the spirit of that, but also there was a family in the community in need. So we started a secret society to help that family anonymously, but also in the spirit of what we learned at the University of Virginia on our college tour. So I am going to share my screen with you again, and we're going to move on to the next part of the presentation. But I thought that you would think that that was pretty cool. So I'm glad that the cloaks were able to come on and join us. So the next thing that I want to talk about is how our kids need health teachers and teachers in general that are sharks. And what I mean by that is, if you think of a shark, right? What do sharks do, right? They float around in the water and all of that type of stuff, but they eat, right? They eat stuff all the time. Sometimes they eat what they're looking for, the right stuff. Sometimes they eat sometimes they eat things that they're not looking for, right? A tire, a shopping cart, something of that nature. And when they do this, they lose teeth sometimes. But sharks also grow their teeth back. If they lose a tooth, they get it back. So they're not really afraid to just bite stuff. And they take risks and they take chances until they find what they're looking for. And as teachers, we should do the same thing, right? We should not be afraid to fail. We should take risks, and we should look and hunt as much as we possibly can for things that may not come from a health resource, but can still be brought into the health room. So there's two activities here that I'm going to float by, because I think I've shared these in other presentations as well. But I'm going to ask the attendees to take a few seconds and think about pretzels, ping pong balls, and sand, and what they all have in common, right? So I don't want quiet time or a lot of dead air in the presentation, but in the back channel, maybe think really quickly what a pretzel jar, I apologize, not pretzels, a pretzel jar, ping pong balls, and sand might all have in common. And if you said smart goals, you're 100% right. So I don't know how many of you are on Facebook. I don't know how many of you are on Facebook and are a little disappointed or ashamed of the fact that you're on Facebook. We're not talking about Facebook, but I saw this activity on Facebook, and it wasn't even really an activity, but I saw this story on Facebook, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen it as well, where a professor, I think it was a philosophy professor, and in front of his class, puts golf balls in a jar, and then pebbles in a jar, and then I think maybe in the story put something else in a jar, and then filled it at the end, I think with a beer, and said, you always have time or room to have a beer with a friend. And obviously that's college level. So you would assume, I think it was graduate level in the story that I read. So you would assume that they were all over 21 years of age. But I took that, and when I read that, I said, you know what, that could be a goal setting lesson. So what I do with my students is I use the same premise, right, with the jar, and I give them an activity to do. I have them write a SMART goal after we've learned how to write SMART goals. And they start writing their SMART goal. And I'm in the front of the room, and I'm filling this jar with ping pong balls. And they're kind of looking up like, all right, what is he doing? And then when the ping pong balls start to get to the top, I ask them to tell me when it's full. And we kind of get a consensus that, okay, at this point it's full. And then I start filling it with rice. So we have the ping pong balls, and then I throw the rice in there, the black sand in there. I used to use rice. And I asked them the same exact question. Asked them to tell me when it's full, just like the professor did in his story. And they figure out when it's full. And then I start filling it with water. And as we transition from the ping pong balls, like you see in the picture, to the pebbles, or I use the black sand, right? They tell me it's full with the ping pong balls, but then I could fit more stuff in it. And I'm like, all right, now it's filled with sand. Okay, but I could still fit water in it. And basically what I have them do is think about all the things that they spend their time on in their life and write it all out. And then they categorize all the things that they do based on ping pong balls, black sand, or water in relation to their SMART goal. Because if we filled our life, which is the jar, up with water first, and then we tried to throw the sand in, it would overflow. It wouldn't all fit. If we put the water in and then started dropping ping pong balls in, it still wouldn't fit. It would float. If we put the sand in first, the ping pong balls wouldn't fit and the water would. The only way to get everything in there is to do it in that order. Ping pong balls, black sand or pebbles like in the picture, and then water or something else that could fit in there, some sort of liquid. And when we use the analogy of the jar being your life and how we can get everything to fit and bringing it back to that SMART goal, the ping pong balls are the things you need to fill your time with first if you want to be able to achieve that goal. Then the black sand or whatever you put in there afterwards can fit. And the water would be the things that we fill our time with last. And it may even be things that may take us away from our goal, like social media may distract us from whatever it is that we're trying to achieve if we're on social media too often. So they set their SMART goal. They make a list of all the things they spend their time on, and then they organize how they spend their time into things that'll help them to achieve their goal. Another activity that I want to float by quickly, again, being a shark, finding something that maybe wasn't designed for education or health education and bringing it into the health room. I was working a lacrosse clinic this past summer, and the Marines came down, and as lacrosse coaches, we handled the lacrosse end, and the Marines handled the leadership piece for the kids. And they did this activity based on leadership. And you may have seen an activity like this one before, where the kids made a circle holding hands, or they put their arms around each other. And their goal is to jump in sequence and change direction. So it would work like this. As a group, they all had to jump to the right one time. Cool. They all did it. Then you have to jump as a group 2 times, but you have to change direction every jump. So we went to the right once. Now we have to do 2 consecutive jumps. So it would go left, right. Now we have to do 3 consecutive jumps. So it would go left, right, left. Now we have to do 4 consecutive jumps. So it would go right, left, and so on until you got to 10. And I'm looking at this, and I use the skill of communication oftentimes for relationships and sex ed. And I'm like, holy cow, this is a relationship activity in the health room. And the way that we kind of spin that into relationships, right? Obviously, so the communication is important there, right? Giving, speaking, receiving messages, figuring things out together, and all of that. But also when we do that activity, there are always things that speak to elements or aspects of relationships, healthy relationships. So one example of that would be noticing without somebody having to speak, noticing when somebody in the circle is uncomfortable or in an uncomfortable situation or being hurt or needs some sort of support or something like that. So for example, we did this in my health room once, and there was a student that was kind of like in the corner a little bit. And as they were jumping, they were moving around, but they couldn't really move the way everybody else moved. But the activity was continuing. That student didn't say anything. They didn't speak up because they didn't want to disrupt the activity. Somebody spoke up for them and noticed that something wasn't right, spoke up, reorganized the group to make sure that that student was comfortable, and then we continued the activity on. There's a whole bunch of examples that if we break out into another room at the end of this presentation specific for this activity that have come up. But again, I just wanted to float over this one. You could be creative with this, but again, it obviously speaks to communication, but there are so many things that occur in that circle that could come to light that also relate back to building strong, healthy, sustainable relationships. Our kids need to start class with some thought. And what I've noticed when I present is a lot of people haven't heard of I see, I think, I wonder activities. And I love I see, I think, I wonder activities. So a great way to start class is with an I see, I think, I wonder. So it's pretty straightforward. So, and I think, I wonder activity is a picture, a video, a statement, something that you show your class at the beginning, and you ask them to think about what they see, or talk about it in a group with a partner, learning partner maybe. What do you see? And then what do you think about what you see? What thoughts do you have? What does that make you think, whatever it was that you just observed? And then what does it make you wonder? What questions do you have based on what you just viewed? And maybe the I think, I wonder activity that might get the most conversation or generate the most discussion is this one. And we're going to come back to this one in a second, but I want to segue into our next getting our kids what they need. So we want to get them thinking right at the beginning of class. We give them an I think, I wonder activity. But let's start to get into particular topics. So our kids need sincere dialogue regarding relationships and sex. And this is where the poll is going to come back in. So if you have your device close to you, go to that poll. And the question is, who is teaching sex ed in any capacity during remote emergency instruction? So if you are teaching sex ed right now, vote vote A. So type A and send it. If you're not teaching sex ed remotely in any way, shape, or form, or anything that could fall under the umbrella of sex ed right now, type B and send it. And in the back channel, as people are voting, I'll share out what people are saying and how many people may be teaching sex ed right now remotely, because that's a really difficult topic to kind of grab onto right now, right? That's something that we want to teach in person, because we don't want to leave things up to like interpretation. We want to be able to answer questions as they come. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why we may be hesitant to teach sex ed right now. I am contemplating, I did a consent activity, which I'm going to show you in a second, but I'm contemplating how I'm going to move forward right now with sex ed and what I'm going to do, because now that school's officially closed for the year and they're never going to take health again, there's a lot of important stuff in there, life skills that they're going to need. So one of the things that I'm thinking to do is basically almost have a parent university, a live parent university, where I invite parents in with their kids. And we don't do everything in every lesson because we're not going to have the time, but just have basic conversations there in things that they may want, that things that those kids need to learn. And I think that the transparency of that has some power. I think that there's a lot of positive elements that may come with doing it that way. I'm going to have all my classes in at the same time, right? Everybody will mute their microphone. We'll do an activity in the beginning where they share stuff different ways, right? I'll mute the microphone so they can share in that way as well. I'll present some things. We'll do another activity. We're going to play a game. Obviously, I would invite my my supervisor in and my principal in and all of that stuff. But that's where I'm at right now, because another piece to it is delivering sex ed instruction remotely. I don't want, parents to feel like there's some like secret lesson going out, or kids to feel like, oh my goodness, like we're going to cover sex ed as a topic. Let me, go into this room and do this. Like, first of all, it probably wouldn't be, again, the conversations that the depth of conversation we might have in person, just because I can't field those questions. And at the same time, I don't want them, I want it to be transparent. I want it to be open, and I want it to maybe help, which we're going to get to in a second, create opportunities for conversations between my students and their parents or their guardians or whoever it is that's responsible for them at home. And some feedback that I've gotten from parents over the years is that a lot of the conversations that we have has opened up the doors for conversations at home. And I'm sure you've gotten a lot of that feedback as well. So back to that I think, I wonder activity. I throw this up. I use this picture every year, and you can read it in a bunch of different ways. And the message is, or the purpose of the sign is really important to get to. So obviously it says don't get raped, but then the get is crossed out and the D is crossed out, and in red it says don't rape. And this sign is basically about changing the conversation, right? So oftentimes, or we used to, or we still hear, depending on, your circle and where you live and the people that you're in contact with and how you choose to consume information. The message is oftentimes to young girls, don't get raped, right? Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. But changing the conversation to knowing what affirmative consent is. It doesn't matter what somebody wears. That's not an invitation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. kind of changes the conversation to, well, don't rape, right? Understand consent. Understand that a no doesn't have to be present. Understand that a yes should be present for you to proceed. And the list goes on and on and on. So that is a good example of an I see, I think, I wonder activity. You could basically turn anything into an I see, I think, I wonder activity. But shortly after we unpack that sign, we start to talk about language. And I don't know about you, but I think that some of the things that kids throw around nowadays, they feel is pretty innocent. And I view it as kind of scary. And when I bring this up at presentations and conferences, no matter where people are from, this term of a thing seems to be pretty consistent. So one of the first things I asked them as we start to move into language is, what in the heck is a thing? And then to put it in context at the bottom, Johnny and I aren't dating, we're a thing. And as we have those conversations, what we learn is they have no idea. They don't know what a thing is. They all have different definitions for what a thing is. And there's no boundaries, there's no expectations, there's no anything. Different people use that term a thing, well, not all, but there are people that use that term a thing, whether they're kids or adults, to basically get what they want out of a scenario. And then we start to unpack the potential dangers in that, I don't know, that construct of a thing. So that's just one example of some of the language that they use that they think, oh yeah, we're a thing, we're a thing, we're a thing. But what does that mean? And it's important to understand what that means. We also unpack a lot of the language that gets tossed around the building sometimes. A few years ago, there was some new slang terms that I only heard in my building from some of my students, and we unpack those. And what are those? What messages do those slang terms, intentionally or unintentionally, what messages could be delivered from those terms? And what does it mean if we willfully and consistently just accept those terms as a new normal, and things of that nature? So, but to go back to consent for a second, I use an activity in my class, Jess and Taylor. There is an activity, and I don't remember where I found it, but it was Jess and Peter. And I switched it to Jess and Taylor. I changed some things about it. Jess and Taylor is a gender neutral name. And I write it in a way that you don't know the gender identity of Taylor. So you also don't know the relationship that Jess and Taylor have. Through distance learning, though, I'm going to show you what I gave my students right now as we're doing remote emergency instruction. But before we get to that, in the classroom, half my class will get the scenario through Jess's perspective as to what happened, and you'll see that. And half of my class will get the same scenario through Taylor's perspective as to what happened. And we do this activity before we really start to learn about what consent means. And what we find is there's a lot of murky waters that can cause confusion, more so for Taylor, who's the initiator, because Taylor doesn't understand what it means to consent to an act. So for this distance learning activity, part one was a Flipgrid response, which I got permission from one of my students and their parents to show you one of their responses, because I thought it was really good for a few reasons. But they received either Jess or Taylor. They didn't see both sides of the situation. And then after reading either Jess or Taylor's point of view, they responded in Flipgrid and basically gave their thoughts and their opinions. After that, they got part two, which was the full scenario, Jess's perspective and Taylor's perspective, and then our mini lesson on consent. They hadn't learned anything about consent when they got part one. And then a few questions. And then part three, I asked them to look at the feedback that I gave them. So the scenarios are pretty short. So I'm going to read through Jess's quickly. So Jess's is, I'll never forget that night as long as I live. We had been going out for a while, and Taylor always seemed really sweet. Well, we had done some kissing and talked about stuff, but I never had any reason not to be trusting. The night of the party, I wore this gorgeous dress that I borrowed from my sister. It was a bit showier than the clothes I normally wear, but I thought it was really cute. At the party, I had some beer, and it made me really tired, so I wanted to lie down. I know I shouldn't have drank, and maybe I shouldn't have suggested we both lie down together. She's starting to blame herself. But it felt weird to just go upstairs by myself and leave Taylor all alone. The next thing I know, Taylor is all over me. It was horrible. I didn't want to scream and make a fool of myself with all those other people in the next room. I tried to fight at first, but I think that just made things worse. Needless to say, I never want to see Taylor again. Everything was going so great. What happened? Taylor's perspective. I still don't understand what happened. Jess and I had been seeing each other for about 2 months, and although we hadn't done anything yet, I had made it pretty clear that I was very attracted to her and eventually expected to. We were supposed to go to a party, and when she showed up in this sexy low-cut dress, I thought maybe it was her way of saying she was ready. At the party, we drank some beer, which made her act a little different, but everything seemed to be okay. When she said she wanted to go lie down and wanted me to come snuggle with her, what was I supposed to think? Of course, I thought it was some kind of hint. I guess she did grumble a bit, but I just thought she wanted to be persuaded. I don't know. We did some stuff and it was fine. I took her home from the party and I thought everything was okay, but ever since then, she refuses to talk to me or go out with me. I thought she really liked me. What happened? So again, the students got only one of those scenarios for part 1. They responded in the flip grid. In part 2, they got the other scenario and a lesson on consent, and then some questions for them to answer inside the Google Doc, and then their glows and grows, which is where my feedback would go. So this is basically how I'm laying out all my remote emergency instruction assignments in the same sort of format. I like to use characters right now to help remove or make it not so personal, right? Create some space maybe, because I know for some students right now, they're struggling. And when I send things home that are so personal, it might make this current situation more difficult for them. So I found that creating characters may help with some of that. But I want to show you one of my students' responses to part 1. So they had only gotten one perspective of the scenario, and this isn't loading. Hopefully it loads really, really quickly, because I would like to show it to you, but I might. Oh, here we go. Come on. I want to close this because that might help it go faster. Okay. Come on. All right. Hopefully this works. Hopefully the volume's good.
So, Jess and Taylor were at a party, right? And they both had too much to drink. I guess Jess was wearing a dress that made Taylor think some things. And before they knew it, Taylor was on top of Jess doing some inappropriate things. And then Jess was trying to fight him off. And he kept going, but that should have been an indicator, like, dude, you gotta stop. If she's, like, fighting you, obviously she doesn't want it. Jess would have said something, but she said there was a lot of people there, and she didn't want to, like, get embarrassed if she said no. But through this whole thing, Taylor still thinks he did nothing wrong. He said everything was okay. Everything was fine. But then the next day or so, I think, Jess didn't even want to talk to him, and he has no idea why.
All right, so I'm going to stop it there and go back to the presentation. So there's a bunch of things that kind of popped up in that. First of all, that response, it was really good, obviously really creative and throwing the cat in there and stuff. But one thing that I want to bring to your attention is, even though it never said whether or not Taylor was male or female, the students assumed that because Jess is female, that Taylor was male. And most of my students made that assumption. And that's a really good talking point to have, right? So obviously when we talk about situations like this and we create characters that are gender neutral, if your students make assumptions, that's a great conversation to have going forward. That student did an awesome job with their response, like most of my students did, and obviously was really creative in the way that they laid it out. So another thing that I want to move to when we talk about open and honest conversations in regards to relationships are relationship red flags, right? So I give my students a lot of these red flags, and we also talk about how I love you could be used as a weapon, but I really want to get to an activity that I share out with them. So this this activity is going to be available to you. I'm going to give a link at the end of the presentation where you could go and get the Jess and Taylor activity and a lot of the things that I'm sharing out right now. But basically what I have them do is read this letter, that email that their best friend wrote them, and go through it for red flags. And I asked them to highlight something that is worthy of paying attention to going forward in one color, and highlight reasons to get out of the relationship right now in another color. And then at the end, after they go through that with a partner or a group, I read the letter. And as I'm reading the letter, I just ask them to yell stop anytime we get to something that they highlighted. And if you're kind of perusing this on the screen right now, there are a lot of things in there to be aware of or end a relationship immediately. And like I said, this activity and this letter will be available to you. Again, this is written in a way that you can't tell the type of relationship that the two characters have, and in a way that is gender neutral. And one of the reasons why it's important to have these conversations in health class is you never know the impact that it might have on not only a group of students, but individual students. So a couple of years ago, I had a student after the play, the school play, kind of asked me in the hallway if she could chat, and I said, sure. And we went down the hallway, and she basically said, I just want to thank you for the conversations that we had last week in health class, because it gave me the courage and the language to change something that was occurring in my life. And the week before in health class, we had been talking about sexual assault and sexual abuse. Another activity that I give my students is I have them give the talk, right? This is towards the end of the sequence. So they get in partners, usually a learning partner, and one person plays the role of the adult and the other person plays the role of the kid. And the adult gives them the talk based on what we learned. And you'll see that there's a book up there because the child, the person playing the role of the kid, is taking notes on what information that they were receiving during the talk that they found to be useful or connect to something that we learned. And then they change roles. And then at the end, we share everything out. And it's a way for me to assess obviously what they grab from our conversations. But what I've also found over time, seeing students later on and whatever, and some parents later on, is that it makes that talk or any talks with actual adults that they have, guardians, parents that they have later on, maybe a little more comfortable because they played it out in some sort of lower anxiety scenario. And they get that practice in terms of, what are the important things that we just learned and what is the most important information that we just went over. So don't forget, be a shark. Many thanks. I know there was a lot of great sessions going on right now and a lot of great sessions across the conference. So I appreciate that you came to view this one, and reach out to me at any time. You could get in touch with me on Twitter. You can get in touch with me on Voxer. You could call me. If you look at the bottom middle, that phone number is a desk line that I have. You could email me. In the top right-hand corner is my website. It's under construction. It's been under construction for a long time. I'm hoping to actually lay it out the way I want it laid out this summer. And I have a podcast, the HPE Quick Tips podcast. It's on iTunes. If you want to be on, I'm always looking for guests that I can highlight. So come on, shoot me an email, let me know, come join, and I'll push that out. All right, so thank you again for joining. Thank you for Phys Ed for putting this on again, and go be health ed sharks and stay in touch.